Hello everyone, today I'll be narrating 3 new creepy posts that I found off of Reddit. Liking this video and subscribing to my channel helps me a lot. After you have heard these stories, let me know what you think of them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's dive straight into their experiences.
These are their stories.
This happened like 12 years ago. I was 14 and my sister was 12. It was during summer vacation and we were hanging out, just the two of us outside, midday. We lived in a smallish town where during weekdays it was pretty empty because adults were at work. Anyway, we'd been messing around, picking flowers and other random stuff, when we decided to cut through a massive field of undeveloped land on the edge of our suburb. It was technically a shortcut to get home, but it wasn't the best idea because it was really bumpy, potted land that other kids and teens left all sorts of stuff laying in. Well, our bad decision came around and bit us. We hadn't made it very far in the field when my sister got 2 bad things at once. Some sort of twisted metal, maybe an old piece of tool, pierced right through her foam flip-flop and into her foot, and right after it happened she shrieked, jerked, and twisted that ankle on the uneven ground. She started crying and howling and I was worried. The metal hadn't gone too deep and I was able to stop the bleeding with the hem of my shirt, but she couldn't walk anymore obviously. Our parents weren't available, didn't know where we were, and this was before I had a cell phone. My sister was still on the ground crying and I was trying to calm her down when something made me feel like looking up. Y'all, it was the feeling of being watched. Out of the field, across the road, standing on the corner in the distance was some random guy watching us. He was too far away for me to see him clearly. All I could tell for sure was that he was blonde, probably adult, and dressed too warmly for July. He was all alone, stock still, just staring at us. I looked back at my sister and basically said to get on my back. I was carrying her home. We were leaving right now. Now, I had to carefully pick my way through this stupid field in my own bad flip-flops, with my crying sister on my back. Luckily, she was tiny, but I was no linebacker either. It had rained a day ago, and the field had puddles of water in the low spots. We were both kind of wet from her falling when she got hurt. I swiveled back to check if he was still watching us, and he was. Not only was he watching us, but he'd crossed the road and entered the field. Now he was standing stock still again and just watching. Ice in the veins doesn't describe it. One of the scariest moments of my life up to that point. My sister looked when I looked, saw my face, and started crying even harder. I just shook her a bit on my back and whispered something like, "Stop it. I need to concentrate on getting us home. Watch him and tell me if he starts following again. Just be quiet." So that's what we did. I started walking again as fast as I could without getting hurt. My sister watched him while I carried her. After less than a minute, she whispered to me that he was following again. How fast? Just walking. Is he watching us? Yes. I told her to tell me if anything changed and kept going. I stomped through puddles and I couldn't see into when I had to, hoping there was nothing sharp in them. I lost a flip-flop in the mud and just kept going. We were about 3/4 of the way through the massive field when my sister whispered that I at least wanted to hear. He was speeding up. I turned us right around, so we were facing him head on, and as loud as I could, I yelled something like, "Hey, we see you, leave us alone, I'll call the cops." Nothing. He'd stop again when I stopped, but gave no sign whatsoever he'd heard me. Just nothing. I turned us around again and kept going. My poor little sister was shaking like a leaf and just saying my name over and over again. It was awful, and there was nothing I could do but keep going. Eventually, he started following again, at a slow pace. I finally made it into our suburb, out of the muddy field and onto solid concrete. Told my sister to hold on as tight as she could and booked it. Started running with her on my back as fast as I could. We couldn't see him anymore, didn't know what he was doing or where he was. Every muscle hurt from carrying her so far. My bare foot was all scratched up from the road, but I didn't stop. I kept moving. With my sister looking out behind us, it felt like my heart was going to explode. After what felt like forever, I made it to our house, ran across the yard, up the drive, put down my sister, who started crying again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely use my key. We made it in safely and called my mom. She had us lock every door and window and came rushing home, but nothing happened after that. He never found us, so we never saw him again. So a few years ago, I, a 17-year-old female at the time, would attend community college at the outskirts of my hometown. I would take an 1.5-hour long bus drive because both of my parents worked and my other siblings were too young to drive. The outskirts of my town, despite being the literal outskirts, are more populated than you expect, with strip malls and apartment buildings. The bus would drop me off about 4 blocks from my university, which isn't too far. I always enjoyed those few minutes. Anyway, this one time, I left my phone at the library. day. Using my brother's phone, I called a friend who worked at the school library during the late evening shift, 7 to 9, and he said he'd bring my phone to me, but he lived closer to the college than I did, so I told him I'd just meet him at his shift and pick it up myself. He said okay, and I boarded the bus at around 6. Now, I get off the bus at my usual spot and the place looked deserted. I'd never been there that late at night, and maybe it was because it was a weekday that people were home, or I don't know. I had my brother's phone in my pocket and just clutched it tighter and tighter, picking up my speed until I was practically jogging. I'm nearing to a corner when a flash of light goes off to my right. There, in the shadows, is a sleazy looking man. He's balding with a tourist shirt unbuttoned halfway. He was wearing sunglasses at night and was wearing some gold jewelry, and most importantly, he had just taken a picture of me. In the instant that I saw the flash go off, I knew it was coming from his phone. Now, I think it's important to understand our positioning. He was pressed against a building to my right at the corner I had turned. I was about 10 feet away from him. To my left, on the same side of the street, was a car with blacked out windows and no license plates, directly across the sidewalk from the man. The car was parked with the driver's seat facing me, so that it was on the wrong side of the road, because America drives on the right side as opposed to the left. I had slowed down at that point as I began to debate my next move: cross the street and continue walking, make a break for the school, turn 180 and leave my phone at the library, or approach the potentially dangerous man. I did the stupidest thing possible and approached the man. Anyway, I demanded to know what he was doing. He looked taken aback. I could see his brain short-circuiting because I was demanding to know what he was doing. He eventually sputtered about how he was just standing here. I said, "No, I saw you take that picture of me." His face fell. He started saying no, he hadn't done that. Why would he want a picture of me? I had imagined it. I asked to see his gallery, which is extremely risky because who knows what I could have seen. He slowly pulls up his gallery and as it's opening, I see a blurry picture of me in the distance. I didn't think I'd get that far. Granted, I had been running on adrenaline during our whole interaction, but this really made me pause. I told him to delete it. Then a door slammed shut. I just knew it was the parked car. My brain cleared up and I hightailed it to the school. I could hear a single pair of footsteps behind me, but I sure wasn't going to turn around and check who it was. The car started, but they would have to do a U-turn on a relatively narrow street just to be able to follow me. I think that's what saved my life. The fact that the car was parked facing the wrong direction. I reached the school out of breath and in tears. My friend opened the building for me and I explained what had happened. He locked us in while he called the police and we waited for them, but the sleazy guy and his buddy were never found. Anyway, my mom had gotten out of work by that point and I called her to ask to pick me up. We waited with my friend till the end of his shift and drove him home too. Needless to say, I carry a mace with me everywhere I go now and I'm yet to find a police report stating a guy matching his description had been arrested. To be honest, I don't think the police believed me fully, but who knows. I'm a single male, 33 years old, who lives alone in Denver. My apartment complex is not what you would call a nice building. I'm on a road close to Colfax Avenue, which if you're familiar with the geography of this area is not the safest boulevard in town. I'm a few streets away from it, but close enough that I wouldn't consider this an up-and-coming neighborhood. This evening, I was watching Netflix on my couch. My two cats were cuddled up against me as I lay under a comforter. The night before, I had watched a horror movie that was scary enough to leave me in an unsettled mood, making it hard to sleep. So this night I decided to watch a stand-up special instead. Keep it light so I wouldn't have any trouble getting some shut-eye. I have classes early the next morning, so I was surprised when I made the conscious decision to turn on a second stand-up special and let myself fall asleep on the couch. I was just so comfy where I lay and didn't want to move, not even to turn off the several lights on throughout my apartment. I remember dozing off around 11 o'clock. It was effortless, which meant I was really snug under the covers with my cats flanking me on either end, creating a tucked-in feeling. And all of a sudden, I'm not sleeping anymore. I am woken up by a knock at my door. Then a man's voice says maintenance. I just sat there, sitting bolt upright on my couch. I knew something was off. I looked at my phone, which was by my left hand, and the time was 2:15 a.m. I didn't move. The floors of my apartment are old wood, and there are many creaky floorboards. I didn't want whoever was knocking to know someone was at home and awake, let alone alert to his presence. My cats got up and ran over to the door as they normally would, but I stayed still and listened. After a few minutes with no answer, the man walked away from the door and down the hallway to the stairs. A moment after that, I heard the back door to the building swing open and closed. I have one window where I have a partial view of that door, so I break my paralysis and race over to it. I saw an old-looking green SUV sitting in the no parking zone just in front of the back door. It must have been running the entire time because I didn't hear it start up and the brake lights were glowing red. Someone, presumably the maintenance man, got in the car and it drove off. I don't don't know how this individual got into the building in the first place, as you would need a key to do so. I don't know what his intentions were, but no one knocks on someone's door at 2:15 a.m. claiming to work for the landlord with good deeds in mind. Alright, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments below. But as always,
Have a nice day.